Hi, welcome back to Cheyenne, Wyoming Urban Gardener. This is Debbie, and we're out here very early in the morning. It's about 7:30 in the morning on August 16th. And I was just looking at the weather reports. We're right now looking at my grandson's little garden bags. I'm calling them bags. It's supposed to be like a garden bed, but it's little garden bags. We've got him two of them. Anyway, I was looking at the weather for the next couple of weeks, and it looks like that we are going to start on a decline of temperatures, especially in the evenings, somewhere towards the end of the month. Now, that is a guess because it's basically a guess when you're going that far out in the forecast. But it says in a couple of weeks we're going to start hitting into the lower 70s and lower 50s. So I'm thinking at that point we are probably going to be just about done on watermelons and cantaloupes for the season. I will leave them in there until the very, very last of when we get down past 50 degrees, because 50 is the rugged outer rim of what watermelons and cantaloupes and things like that can handle. So after that, the vines would start dying back. So we will leave them until then and see if we get anything out of these watermelons and cantaloupes, because right now they are so close to being finished, and I'm going to show you those in just a moment, that it's really just right there, just about ready to finish out. Last year when my cantaloupes were finished, they actually fell off of the vine, and that's what you really want to look for, is when cantaloupes are done and you've got them in a container and you've got them trellised and things like that, they will actually fall off of the vine themselves, and they will also do the same if they're out in a field. But watermelons will not fall off the vine. You just basically have to look for the tendril that is dried up right up above where the connection for the watermelon is. So you look for the first dry tendril, and usually that means that they are ready. But I've had that happen before where they have not. There's been something happen to the tendril that caused it to die off way earlier. So sometimes you cannot look at that. You can try to smell the watermelon, see if you can smell anything as far as ripeness, or you can thump the watermelon to see if it sounds like it's a little bit hollow, and that's good indicators of it being finished. But I have some varieties of watermelons that are actually supposed to get more than 5 pounds, more than 10 pounds on some of them, and they've not quite reached that. So I'm not sure that those would be the ones that would be finished. But some of our doll baby watermelons and crimson sweets and sugar babies and things like that are smaller watermelons, they will most likely be finished. So we will hope that we get some watermelon this season. If we do, this would actually be one of probably 2 seasons that I've had since I've been here for the 7 years in Cheyenne, Wyoming, that I've had watermelon completely go to fruition. So anyway, you're looking at my grandson's little garden beds right here. His tomato has started picking up and growing like crazy. We've harvested a few tomatoes off of it, and I was wondering if it was just going to be staying pretty small, because it is this pretty small tomato. And it suddenly started picking up and growing again like crazy. So I think the soil finally straightened itself out, because the first batch of soil that we have in his garden beds, that is the very first 3. There's 3 grow bags in here basically that are connected together. These first 3 had the bad soil in them, and it basically suffered throughout the season, and we just left it in there because we were not going to change it all out. So it kind of struggled the entire season, but I think it has finally straightened itself out. I've mixed some of the soil that I have that I typically use in there, and it seemed to have helped it out. So he's got actually a pretty good sized pepper in there. You can kind of see that right there. And his broccoli is finally getting up to the size where it could actually think about giving us a head. And his borage is getting ready to bloom. And like I said, his tomato has started picking up and growing like crazy. And he has another grow bag that we picked him up, and he has lemon basil in here. He loves basil. He will come outside in the mornings or anytime really and just grab a leaf of basil, and he'll have that in his mouth chewing it. Now, a lot of people do not know, they eat basil like crazy, but they do not realize that if you eat too much basil, it's actually bad for your liver. So you may want to be aware of that. Do not eat too much basil because it is very bad for your liver. So eat it sparingly. So we kind of watch him to make sure that he's not eating too much of it. He also has a celosia back here that looks like a brain when it comes to complete bloom. And he's got a little bit of bloom on it. You can see that there. Kind of looks like a coxcomb right now. But it will fill out into a large bloom about hand size. And it'll look like a brain. And then he has some radishes in here as well. So he's got a whole little bag of radishes right there. And then, of course, we have another basil here that is going to seed. He eats that too. But in general, the garden is looking so good right now. I think we've got corn already. We've had some of the corn trying to escape the husks, and you can see that they definitely have corn kernels in there. So I think we've got some corn that is ready, but I'm still leaving it a little bit longer. I don't want it to get hard, so I'm kind of trying to check it every day. But our silks have died on the corn. They are actually dried up and died off. So you can see that there. And that's usually a pretty good indicator that they are done. But I've had situations where we will have the husks dead like that and it still will not be ready. And of course, we've got a few that are still coming on because there are a lot of corn in here and it's very compact together because I have to plant close together because of the lack of space that we have here. But we do have a lot of corn in here. There are 5 rows of corn. And like I said, the ones that were shaded in the back, they would tassel, and they did. So some of them are a little bit shorter. That's typical of this variety of corn. It is an early sun-glow hybrid. So it does not get very tall, and it stays about the shortness of bantam corn. I think it is a cross between bantam and probably a taller variety such as peaches and cream or something. I haven't looked at the actual cross of what they're using because I call it a hybrid. But it gets about 4.5 feet tall with the tassels. Some have had go up to about 6 feet. So you can see some of the taller ones in there. But most of them are about 4.5 feet. Some of them are actually 3 feet. But they still have very nice sized ears of corn on them. Let's see if I can find one here. You can see right there that one has an ear of corn on it, and it's only about 3 feet tall. And pretty much the same size as the taller ones. And that kind of happens every time that I've grown this corn. It's all been good. It's just sometimes it gets a little bit shorter depending on where it's shaded or not. But the ones in the back that were shaded, they are tasseling. You can see the tassels right there. So they're going to be the last part of the corn, and I'm actually kind of happy with that because we'll have another basically batch that'll be ready before it gets too cold for it to happen. So anyway, we've got Tahitian squash in here that has now climbed to the top of the corn. You can see there it basically goes up and down the rows. It goes basically down and then back up and then back down and then back up, and then sometimes it'll end up branching off and climbing the corn. So that's happened. This is probably the best corn that I have had so far as looks. Last year it was kind of sparse, but we had a lot of corn, and the year before that it was about the same because we really were trying to work with the space, or I was trying to work with the space, and maybe spaced it out a little bit too far, so I didn't get quite as much. But this corn this year looks amazing, and I know a lot of people are struggling right now with having corn because of either drought or temperatures or this, that, and the other. So I'm very, very blessed and happy to have some corn this season. We're very close to the road, so you're going to hear a lot of noises, so I do apologize for that. Even though we can't really see the road or anything like that because we've got the house and the garage and all that. But it looks beautiful this year. I'm really going to be happy to have some corn to put away. And we've got that big new freezer. We've got a half cow that we'll be picking up in September, about the mid part of September. So you'll be seeing that. We'll be doing videos on that. And when we start having the harvest come in really good, you'll be seeing videos on those as well. I've had a lot of harvests come in already that I have not videoed because it just becomes too much. I am basically coming out here and harvesting every single day. I've got cucumbers coming in and green beans coming in and squash coming in and all kinds of things. So I'm coming out here and getting about a large basket full every single day, and then I'm having to process it and things like that. And we're also baking bread and basically getting ready for winter and stocking up and all of that, in case times get hard. So we have been working at this stuff every single day, and I just don't pick up the camera every single day and video all of it because it just becomes too much to do so. As far as pounds of food, I've never really weighed the pounds of food, but I would say we've already had about 100 pounds of food come out of the garden. Probably even more than that because we've had a lot of squash. We've got a lot of zucchini and a lot of straight neck squash this season. And a lot of herbs that have came out of here. We've got more herbs than we've ever had before. And beans, we've got more beans than we've ever had before. We've just got so much going on. And we probably have beans in the corn right now. But unfortunately, I won't be able to get in here and harvest any of those beans until I can get in here and get at the corn, which is going to be a whole big process. But you can see that we've got beans here on some of the ones that are sticking up. So I'm sure we've got beans that are actually ready more down at the base because they do produce all the way down to where the roots are. And this is the rattlesnake pole beans, Kentucky Wonders, Royal Burgundy bush beans. In here we've got 2 rows of the Royal Burgundy bush, and then the rest of it is Kentucky Wonder and rattlesnake pole beans. So the rattlesnake pole beans are the most likely the ones that you see climbing out over the top of everything. Because they get to about 10 foot, and I've never had that with the Kentucky Wonders. I think they get about 6 or 7 feet mostly. So, but it's possible. It's possible they could get to 10 feet or more. I have had that in the past, but mostly in Tennessee, not here. However, it seems like that we've got the right mix of nutrients and everything going on in the soil. We've done some compost and things that have broken down last season, so we may actually have that going on with the Kentucky Wonders this season. I've noticed that the rattlesnake pole beans have a purple flower versus the Kentucky Wonders, which have a white flower. So those do have white flowers, so I'm thinking they may be the Kentucky Wonders. I've not seen white flowers on the rattlesnake pole beans as yet, but I haven't really paid a whole lot of attention to whether they get paler more later in the season, so I don't know. It looks like we've got a little bit of some corn smut going on. I've noticed a lot of people mentioning corn smut, and this is the first that I had seen in the garden this year. So right there you can see a little bit of some corn smut. That is edible. I noticed a lot of people were surprised this year that maybe hadn't seen it before, and were asking, what the heck is this stuff? It's corn smut. You can eat it. It's edible. I have not eaten it before. I'm just mostly going after the corn, but it is something that's supposedly edible. We also have some mushrooms that'll pop up in the garden here, but I'm not an expert on mushrooms. If I grow them inside, I know what they are because they come already in a package and you know what they are, but the ones that grow outside, I'm not too sure about because there's a lot of mushrooms that can look like each other. Things like staghorns and morels, and there's something called a false morel. It looks almost exactly the same, but it's toxic. So you have to be really sure about your mushrooms before you start collecting. And one of the things that mushrooms can do is liver failure. So, and it happens very quickly. And I don't want to toy around with that, so I'll trust the ones that come in the containers that I know what they are, because there's some mushrooms that grow in here that I just don't know, I'm not real sure about, and I'm not going to take that risk, especially with my grandson and with myself, to be honest. But anyway, we've got loads and loads of zinnias in here blooming like crazy, and our nasturtiums are so huge, but I have not seen a bloom as yet, but they are just spilling out all over the place. But like I said, I haven't seen a bloom yet. They look very healthy. So I'm hoping to see some blooms out of these. I've got the Empress variety, which is a red one, and then I've got the standard nasturtiums, which are, I think, orange and yellow and things like that. But I haven't seen any blooms as yet, but I hope to get some blooms soon. But we have all sorts of zinnias in here, and finally some other colors like oranges and yellows and reds instead of just the pink. We've ended up with a lot of pink in certain areas, and I would have liked to have had some more color maybe in here, but we've got a lot to still bloom, and hopefully they'll bloom soon and we can find out what colors they're going to be. I noticed you really can't tell, even if it looks like it's pink in the center, until it blooms out fully. We have had so many hibiscus off of these hibiscus trees as well, or bushes. I'm not real sure, because I've seen hibiscus get pretty huge. And we have had loads and loads and loads of flowers off of these. We're getting about 10 to 15 flowers every day now, because we've got the two big ones here, and then we have the two smaller ones back here, but they're all blooming like crazy. So we've been collecting the blooms, and we've actually got someone that comes and picks up the blooms, because we've already made hibiscus syrup and sugar and dried a lot of hibiscus for our own needs. So at this point, it's pretty much excess, and we have someone that's coming to pick up the extra blooms, and they're using those for tea. And we've got our newest plants are looking fantastic, and I'm going to go ahead and get those transplanted out today. I've been talking about it, but really hasn't needed to. Those blocks are pretty big of soil in there. They have only 9 of them. So they've got plenty of nutrients going on, and they look very, very healthy. I'm going to go ahead and get those transplanted out so they've got a little bit more space. And then our burpee pickling cucumbers that are at the base of the hibiscus are blooming like crazy, and I've actually got a couple of cucumbers on the other 2 that I planted. Let me show you those, because they have gotten enormous. These over here are a little bit more shaded, so they haven't gotten quite as big, but we do have cucumbers on these 2. You can see one right there. But they have gotten really huge. I ran out of trellises, so I don't have any more trellises. I could probably put in some bamboo now that I've started to pull a few plants out that are done for the season. So I can get in here with some bamboo now and probably get them trellised up, at least on those, so they're not spreading out all over the ground, because it makes it more difficult to try to find the cucumbers when they are just spread out all over the place. So I've really enjoyed having the containers and the trellises to try to combat that, so I can find the cucumbers a lot easier. But all of the container garden is looking amazing. We've had so many cucumbers already. I need to get pickling, because I have so many in my fridge that I need to pickle. And then someone brought us another bag of cucumbers to pickle, so I've just got cucumbers like crazy, pickling cucumbers like crazy. But like I said, there is the watermelon vines, at least some of them, and we have some pretty good sized watermelons on these guys. You can see one right there, and then there's another one right next to it that's pollinated, but I don't think it's going to have enough time to really come on. And I noticed another one yesterday, but there's one out here at the end. Pretty good sized. These again are the smaller watermelon variety, the doll babies, so they're not going to get super huge. They're about like a sugar baby. But here is another one right there. That one's actually popped up, and I didn't even see it until recently, like yesterday. And we've got another one right in there. And let's see if I can find some more. There's a lot in here. They're growing like crazy. And you can see that they have not affected anything as far as the strawberries and the basil goes. Those are all still doing amazing in here. We've got strawberries hanging out everywhere, and ripe strawberries in there that we need to pick. But this converted kiddie pool turned out to be such a great investment this season. And don't worry, my grandson still has a kiddie pool. But we've had loads of cucumbers off of the spring burpless cucumber, but it's, I think, is just about finished. It has bloomed itself to death, really. And it'll probably still produce some more, but they're now starting to get a little bit misshapen just because it's toward the end of its season. And it really was already pushing it anyway when I planted it late, because it is a spring variety and should have been ready probably in June. But, you know, we push the seasons here with Cheyenne, Wyoming, because we're in 5A, 5B gardening zone. And temperatures can be low at night, and we had issues with cold soil this season. Had to plant the squash, like the zucchini and the straight neck squash, multiple times to try and get it up and going, and then finally got it up and going. So sometimes it can be a struggle here, but at least we have lots of seeds that we've saved from previous seasons, so we don't have much of a worry with that. So we've got so many doll baby watermelons in here, and the plants are just massive. This guy is, I mean, there's several watermelons in there, but basically just planted them all at the outer edge of the kiddie pool all the way around. So there's multiple ones in here, but it just has spread out so much, and I've had to move all of the containers around it. We've initially had them lining it, but we've had to move and move and move and move. So anyway, our tomatillos, our giant tomatillos, are to the point that they're wanting to start blooming now, which is fantastic. I didn't know if they would actually do anything, but they do have some bloom heads on them that have started. So hopefully we'll get some giant tomatillos out of these guys. Up until the frost, I mean, these guys still grow. I haven't had any issues with them slowing down or anything. When the temperatures get a little bit cooler, they've just continued to go and go and go. So we'll see how they do. But the stalks on these guys are massive in relation to the stake that I put in there. In fact, I'm thinking I need to get a bigger stake, to be honest. So we'll see about that. We've gotten a lot of the Space Master cucumbers, but I've not been too happy with those because they have been very weird shapes and all kinds of things, and they took a very long time to produce anything in relation to the other cucumbers, which were done much faster. I mean, we've got lemon cucumbers that I didn't plant until mid part of July that are already starting to set cucumbers, and these guys took the entire season. The Space Master took all the way from the beginning of June until now to start producing. So I am not going to grow that variety again next season. In fact, I'm probably going to go with something called a suyo cucumber that I've already gotten the seeds for, and we're going to try that one out next season. We've got a couple of Sharon cantaloupe that have set on the vines, with the big pot that has the 3 white Crenshaws and the 3 white spine cucumbers, and then the 3 Sharon cantaloupes. I thought that 2 had actually pollinated, and it looks like only 1. Looks like this guy did not get pollinated. It's turning yellow, so it'll probably fall off. So it looks like we only got the 1 Sharon this season that'll have time to finish out, perhaps. It may not. It just depends on how fast that cantaloupe gets bigger. But the vines were beautiful this year. Had lots and lots of vines. Hopefully we'll get a better season next season, earlier, so that way we can and warmer soil, so we can have some Sharon cantaloupe next season, because that's the ones that I got the most of last season, and unfortunately these just didn't do as well this season because of the cold soil temperatures. They got planted late because it was so cool, a couple other things. So anyway, bummer on this season for those, but we do have cantaloupes that I'll show you here in just a moment that are almost ready. But everything else is looking absolutely fantastic, and just blooming out like crazy. You can see our watermelons hanging there, and these guys are really getting bigger. And I'll show you, we've got a pretty good sized watermelon right over here. It's just 1 on the vine, so I think it's put all of its energy into this 1 watermelon. and that one is right there. So this is a good sized pot, and that is a pretty good sized watermelon. So looking forward to that one. We've had loads of yellow pear tomatoes off of this one, and it is way past the stake at this point. So hopefully it doesn't topple over or anything, but I haven't had any issues with it yet. And we've got some cucumbers at the base of that as well, which are Space Master cucumbers. They're blooming and they're starting to put runners on, but I haven't seen any cucumbers from them as yet, but hopefully we will. And we do have some sort of squash back here, and I'm not real sure what it is as yet. I don't remember planting anything. That could have been a volunteer in that container. So I'm not real sure what it is at this point, but hopefully we'll find out soon. And then we've got some more cucumbers in this container here. And I think there's also a squash in here. Yes, looks like there you have a straight neck yellow squash. And I did not plant that one, so that's probably a volunteer. And it's got a squash on it, so hopefully we'll get something out of that guy. But loads and loads of watermelons in here. You can see them just basically sitting all over the ground now or in the pots. And then here is the other cantaloupe. This is the Ball 2076. So if you're looking at this variety of cantaloupe, we do have webbing on this cantaloupe, and there's webbing on the other ones. We've got 4 now. There are 4 plants in here, so 1 each plant. That's really all we need when we've got containers like this, because they exude so much energy in producing their fruit. So you can see we've got 4 cantaloupes there, and hopefully they'll all get finished out. And at this point, if there is any more cantaloupes that pollinate and pop up, I will actually take them off of the vine so they can finish out those 4. And then we've got a couple of watermelons in here. I'm not real sure they'll get finished. They have been very slow to grow for some reason in this container, so I'm not sure about those. And then we've got these sugar babies over here, and they most likely are actually ready. This is about the size that they get. And I haven't looked at the tendrils. I'm just going to let them go until I am absolutely sure that they are ready. But we basically have them sitting like bowling balls on top of each other. And there are 5, I believe, on this vine. Or actually 4. One of them did not pollinate, so it fell off. And I'm not real sure that this one is actually a sugar baby down here. It could be a Charleston Gray, because I did plant the 2 in that container. But it will never get to fruition because the Charleston Grays are huge, huge watermelons. And I think next year we will use some of the black plastic to try to get it a little bit warmer for these watermelons. And we will try that and see if that helps a little bit to get some bigger watermelons in here. But I think this concrete, the cement, is the best way to go on that. And looks like someone has thrown out a plastic water bottle. We end up with everyone's trash in the neighborhood here because they throw their stuff out along the road out here, and then it blows into our area. See, there's a cup. And there wasn't out here yesterday. So anyway, I'll get that picked up here in a moment. And we have our morning glories growing like crazy. And they've got some blooms on them. They haven't bloomed yet, but they are getting blooms on them. And in my experience, they like a little bit cooler temperatures early in the morning. So I look that I'll come out here one morning and they'll all be bloomed. But we have more radishes in here. They're definitely doing great now. And some lettuce, since it's gotten a little bit cooler. And then we've got some more butterdish squash out here, and they are starting to bloom right now. We've got one that's getting pretty big, and a little bit of variation in color in it. So hopefully we'll get some butterdish squash over here. And then we've got some more cucumbers in here that are blooming and starting to produce right now. Some of the vines are actually getting pretty big. And these are supposed to be Space Master cucumbers as well. As you can see, they do run. Not quite as long as probably a standard cucumber variety, but they do have runners on them. So yes, I see some cucumbers down in there. And these are in ground, so hopefully they'll be a little bit better than the ones that were in the containers. And we've got a couple of borage out here, and look at all of our beans. The beans that have only been planted for about 3 weeks now, and they are just going nuts. They've got blooms starting on them, so we'll have beans on those guys soon. But anyway, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell for notices on new videos as they come out. And that is the look at the herb garden, and we'll see you in the next video.